Blood splattered across the containment chamber floor as the creature thrashed violently against its restraints. Alarm systems blared, bathing the room in pulsating red light. Medical staff scrambled for safety behind reinforced barriers. The massive beast, with six powerful limbs and teeth like daggers, roared in pain and fury, each movement tearing the titanium restraints further from their moorings. "Its vital signs are critical," shouted a technician from behind a monitoring station. "Heart rate unstable, blood pressure dropping." Eleanor Reed's voice cut through the chaos, cold and precise. "Initiate termination protocol. Now." The security team positioned their weapons at the creature, fingers tensed on triggers. "Don't." The single word carried such quiet authority that everyone froze. A tall, weathered man stood in the doorway, his presence commanding instant attention. His silver-gray hair was cut military short, and a jagged scar ran from his temple to his jawline. His eyes, sharp and observant, took in the scene with practiced efficiency. "I can approach it," he said, already moving forward. "Hayes, that's a suicide mission," Dr. Reed called after him. Michael Hayes didn't look back as he stepped toward the containment field. "Maybe," he replied. "Or maybe I know something you don't." 24 hours earlier, Michael Hayes had been tending to a wounded mountain lion at his wildlife rehabilitation center in rural Montana. The converted barn housed 6 enclosures for injured predators deemed too dangerous by other facilities. A faded sign above the entrance read, "Last Chance Ranch, where predators get a second chance." At 55, Michael's body carried the map of his life's battles. Scars from shrapnel marked his left side, souvenirs from an IED in Fallujah. His right knee ached when storms approached, a permanent reminder of a helicopter crash in the Hindu Kush Mountains of Afghanistan in 2008. His hands, once steady enough to disarm explosives in total darkness, now moved with the deliberate precision of a man who'd learned that patience trumps speed. He was checking the mountain lion's healing leg wound when his satellite phone rang, the secure line few people had access to. "Hayes," he answered, keeping his voice low to avoid agitating the sedated cat. "This is General Matheson, United States Special Operations Command." Michael straightened. He hadn't heard from the general since Afghanistan in 2008. "It's been a while, sir." 14 years, 2 months. The general's voice was grave. "I need your particular expertise, Hayes. National security matter." "I'm retired, sir. Have been for a decade. This isn't a request for your combat skills." A pause. "It's about your other talent." Michael glanced at the mountain lion, remembering how it had been brought in snarling and vicious 3 weeks ago, shot by a rancher after attacking livestock. Now it slept peacefully under his care. "What's this about, General?" "I can't discuss it over this line. A transport will arrive at your location in 3 hours. Pack for desert conditions. Extended stay." The line went dead before Michael could respond. He looked around at the sanctuary he'd built after leaving the military, his refuge from the world of violence and secrets. Something significant must have happened for them to pull him back in. 3 hours later, a black military helicopter descended onto his property, scattering pine needles across the clearing. As Michael approached with his duffel bag, he noticed the absence of insignia on the craft, a black ops transport. The side door slid open to reveal a young officer in unmarked fatigues. "Master Chief Hayes," she called over the rotor wash. "Just Michael now," he corrected, climbing aboard. "Captain Andrea Morgan, sir." She handed him a sealed envelope. "Your mission brief. You'll want to read it before we land." Inside the envelope was a single page with a top-secret stamp and a location: Groom Lake, Nevada. Area 51, the most secure military installation in America. The helicopter approached a vast desert compound surrounded by mountains and endless security perimeters. After landing, Michael was escorted through a series of checkpoints, each requiring higher levels of clearance. The underground elevator descended for what felt like minutes, suggesting they were traveling deep beneath the desert floor. When the doors finally opened, Michael stepped into a facility that looked more advanced than any military installation he'd seen. The walls were lined with technology that appeared decades ahead of anything publicly available. A gruff, square-jawed man in his early 60s approached. His military bearing was unmistakable, though he wore a simple black tactical uniform with subdued colonel insignia. The scars on his face and the distant look in his eyes marked him as someone who'd seen his share of combat. Vietnam era, Michael guessed. Hayes, Colonel James Wilson, Security Director. Former Force Recon Marines. They shook hands, each man silently assessing the other with the quick calculation of veteran operators. Vietnam, Michael asked. 2 tours, 68 and 70, Khe Sanh, and later with Special Operations Group in Laos. Wilson's face remained impassive, but his eyes carried the weight of memories few could understand. Desert Storm in Afghanistan for you, I hear. Plus a few places that don't exist on maps. Wilson nodded, understanding. Follow me. The briefing starts in 5. They walked through corridors where scientists in lab coats hurried past security personnel carrying weapons Michael didn't recognize, more advanced than standard military issue. What exactly am I doing here, Colonel? Michael asked quietly. My war days are behind me. This isn't about war, Wilson replied. It's about something you did in Montana, with animals. He stopped at a reinforced door. Fair warning, Hayes. What you're about to see will change everything you think you know about our place in the universe. The door slid open to reveal a conference room where a group of people waited around a table. At the head sat a woman in her 50s with sharp features and calculating eyes. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her lab coat bore the insignia of the facility's scientific division. Dr. Eleanor Reed, Wilson announced, chief scientist of Project Sentinel. She didn't stand or offer her hand. Mr. Hayes, your service record is impressive. Your subsequent career choice is peculiar. I found my calling, Michael replied evenly. Indeed. She gestured to the chair across from her. Please sit. What we're about to show you is classified beyond top secret. Michael took his seat, noticing the others around the table. 3 scientists, 2 military officers, and a younger man whose athletic build and alert posture marked him as Special Forces. Reed tapped a command into the table's integrated console. The lights dimmed and a holographic display materialized above the center of the table. 18 days ago, our long-range detection systems identified an object entering Earth's atmosphere at 0247 hours, she began. Unlike conventional meteors, this object decelerated and changed course multiple times before crash landing in the Sonoran Desert. The hologram showed the trajectory ending at impact coordinates. Special Forces Recon Team Delta was deployed to secure the site, Reed continued. Captain Jackson led the operation. The younger Special Forces officer nodded at Michael. Sean Jackson, Delta Force. Reed continued. What Captain Jackson's team discovered is not a meteorite. She tapped another command. The hologram shifted to show wreckage unlike anything Michael had ever seen. The craft was approximately 20 meters long, constructed of materials that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. This was not human technology, Reed stated flatly. Michael kept his expression neutral, though his mind raced with implications. You found a crashed alien spacecraft. Correct, but that's not why you're here. Reed changed the display again. The craft had occupants. Most were deceased upon impact, but some survived. The hologram showed containment units housing creatures unlike anything from Earth. Some resembled large canines, others more reptilian. One appeared almost crystalline in structure. We've established a research facility to study these beings, Reed explained, their biology, technology, and potential threat assessment. I'm still not seeing where I fit in, Michael said. Captain Jackson leaned forward. One of the creatures saved my life. All eyes turned to him. During extraction from the crash site, we were attacked by a predator like a mountain lion, but twice the size, native to the area. 3 of my men were injured before I could get a shot off. Jackson's voice grew quiet. Then one of the aliens, we call it Thor, broke free from its containment and engaged the predator. Fought it off, but got badly injured in the process. Thor protected you, Michael asked, without hesitation. Jackson nodded. It's been aggressive toward everyone since we brought it here, but Dr. Reed believes that's due to its injuries and fear. Reed cleared her throat. The creature's condition has deteriorated. Standard sedatives have no effect on its metabolism. We cannot approach to treat its wounds, and humane termination appears to be our only option. Unless, Wilson interjected. Unless what? Michael asked, already suspecting the answer. Unless you can do with it what you do with those predators in Montana, Wilson finished. Get close enough to treat it without getting torn apart. Michael studied the holographic image of Thor, a massive 6-limbed creature with dense fur, powerful musculature, and teeth designed for tearing flesh. "I'll need to see it," he said finally. The containment chamber housing Thor was isolated from the main facility. Guards with specialized weapons stood at attention outside the reinforced doors. "What are those?" Michael asked, nodding toward their unfamiliar rifles. "Sonic disruptors," Wilson explained. "Developed based on technology from the craft. Non-lethal, but effectively incapacitating to most biological organisms." "Most oi, Thor seems resistant. Higher pain threshold than we anticipated." They entered an observation room overlooking the containment chamber. Through the one-way glass, Michael could see the creature restrained on a metal platform. Thor was massive, at least 8 feet long, with a muscular body covered in thick blue-black fur. 6 powerful limbs ended in claws that could easily disembowel a human. Its head was vaguely wolf-like, though with a more pronounced cranium, suggesting higher intelligence. The creature thrashed weakly against its restraints, dark fluid seeping from wounds on its left side. Monitoring equipment beeped warnings as its vital signs fluctuated. Dr. Reed stood beside Michael, clinical detachment in her voice. "Internal bleeding, 3 broken limbs, severe lacerations. If it were terrestrial, I'd estimate no more than 12 hours left without intervention." "Why save my team if it's so dangerous?" Captain Jackson wondered aloud. "Territorial behavior, perhaps," Reed suggested. "Or it perceived the predator as a greater threat to itself." Michael observed Thor's movements, the pattern of its breathing, the way its eyes darted around the room. "It's not aggression," he said quietly. Reed turned to him. "Excuse me. It's body language. It's not showing aggression, it's showing fear, extreme fear and pain." Michael stepped closer to the glass. "The restraints are making it worse. It feels trapped and vulnerable." "Those restraints are the only thing keeping my staff safe," Reed countered. "I need to go in there." "Absolutely not," Reed declared. "Protocol strictly forbids." "Your protocol will get this creature killed," Michael interrupted, "and you'll lose whatever opportunity it represents." Colonel Wilson studied Michael's face. "You think you can get close to it?" "I know I can." "That's a hell of a risk," Hayes, Wilson warned. "I've seen what those claws can do." "Every animal communicates fear and pain the same way," Michael explained. "It's universal body language. I've seen it in wolves, bears, big cats. Doesn't matter the species. If I can show it I'm not a threat, establish trust." "This isn't some wounded mountain lion," Reed objected. "It's an extraterrestrial organism with unknown capabilities in psychology. Pain is pain. Fear is fear." Michael turned to Captain Jackson. "It protected your team, showed something beyond instinct. If it were purely aggressive, your men would be dead instead of injured." Jackson nodded slowly. "He's right. Thor had a clear shot at me after taking down the predator. It just looked at me, then collapsed." Michael made his decision. "I'm going in. No weapons, no restraints, no sedatives." "This is highly irregular," Reed protested. "So is an alien crash landing in the Sonoran Desert," Michael countered. "We're past regular, Doctor." Wilson looked between them, then sighed. "Your call, Hayes. But I'm not explaining to the general why I let his former top operative get eviscerated by an alien." And so Michael Hayes found himself stepping into the containment chamber, where Thor thrashed against his restraints, blood splattering across the floor with each desperate movement. The security team stood ready with sonic disruptors. Dr. Reed monitored vital signs from behind protective barriers. Captain Jackson watched with tense anticipation. Michael moved slowly, deliberately, making himself smaller by crouching slightly. He positioned his body at an angle, avoiding direct confrontation posture. His eyes never locked with Thor's, instead focusing just past the creature's shoulder, a technique he'd learned from decades working with predators. Direct eye contact was a challenge. Avoiding it was a sign of respect. Thor's massive head swiveled toward him, nostrils flaring as it caught Michael's scent. A low, rumbling growl vibrated through the chamber floor. Everyone held their breath. One swipe from those claws would disembowel him instantly. Michael stopped moving, maintaining his non-threatening posture. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, he spoke the words that would change humanity's relationship with the cosmos forever. "Take it slow, friend. No one's going to hurt you now." The effect was immediate and astonishing. Thor's growling ceased. The creature's ears, previously flat and against its skull in aggression, twitched forward. Its breathing, rapid and shallow from pain and fear, slowed slightly. Michael took another small step forward. Nobody here wants to hurt you. I know you're scared. I know everything hurts, but I can help. I promise. Thor's eyes, six pupilled orbs of deep amber, remained fixed on Michael, but the hostility in them dimmed slightly. Recognition dawned in those alien eyes, not of Michael specifically, but of his intention. Somehow across the vast gulf of species and star systems, something universal was being communicated. Behind the observation glass, Dr. Bormerman, Reed whispered to her assistant, "This should not be working." Michael took another step now within striking distance. He extended his hand, palm down, fingers loose, the universal gesture of peace among Earth's predators. "I know you saved those people," Michael said softly. "Captain Jackson told me. You're a brave one, aren't you? Got hurt protecting them." Thor's tail, previously lashing violently, settled to the floor. Its breathing synchronized with Michael's, deep and steady. When Michael finally closed the distance and placed his hand gently on the creature's massive head, the room fell completely silent. Even the monitoring equipment seemed to quiet in reverence of the moment. "I'm here now," Michael whispered. "We'll get through this together." Thor's muscles, previously tensed for attack, relaxed under Michael's touch. The impossible had happened, first contact not through advanced technology or mathematical equations, but through the simple language of compassion that transcended the stars. Over the next 4 hours, Michael worked methodically to treat Thor's wounds, maintaining constant physical contact and soft verbal reassurance. His hands moved with confidence over the alien anatomy, feeling for injuries that the facility's advanced scanning technology couldn't properly interpret. "3 broken limbs," Michael announced quietly. "The upper left one is worse compound fracture. Punctured organ on the left side that's causing the internal bleeding. Several deep lacerations along the back." Drea Reed had cautiously entered the containment area, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. She kept her distance but observed with growing fascination. "How are you determining this without scanning equipment?" she asked. "I can feel it," Michael replied, his hands continuing their gentle exploration. "Bones grind when they're broken. Breathing sounds wet when there's blood in the lungs. Muscles tense here, loose there. Bodies tell you everything if you know how to listen. That's highly inefficient compared to our medical technology." "Maybe," Michael glanced up at her, "but scanners don't build trust. Thor's letting me touch him because he knows I'm trying to help. If I strapped him down and started running machines over him, he'd panic again." Thor made a soft, whining sound, surprisingly vulnerable from such a powerful being. Michael immediately returned his attention to the creature, placing his hand gently but firmly on Thor's shoulder in a gesture of reassurance. "The pain will pass," Michael murmured. "We're going to fix it." Captain Jackson watched from the doorway, wonder evident on his face. "I've transported dangerous species for extraction operations. Never seen anything like this." "Humans have a reputation for this," commented one of the technicians, "bonding with predators. Every other intelligent species we've theorized about would consider it insanity." "Insanity or not, it works," Colonel Wilson observed, recording the interaction on his tablet. "Dr. Reed, what supplies do we need to get Hayes?" Reed composed herself. "Based on preliminary analysis of their biology, tissue regeneration, compound bone-setting equipment, cellular stabilizers. And a blanket," Michael added without looking up. "A blanket," Reed's brow furrowed. "He's going into shock. Body temperature dropping. Feel his skin should be warm with slight moisture. Right now it's cooling rapidly." Reed hesitantly extended a sensor probe, confirming Michael's assessment. How had the human noticed such a subtle sign without equipment? "Bring the requested items," she ordered her staff. "Quickly." While they waited, Michael continued talking to Thor in that same steady, calm voice. He told the creature about Earth, about Montana, about a wolf he'd rehabilitated after it had been caught in a poacher's trap. The story seemed pointless to Reed, but Thor's eyes never left Michael's face. The alien was listening, truly listening. "Why do you speak to it?" Reed asked. "It cannot understand your words." "He understands my tone," Michael explained, "and my intention. Pain and fear are universal. So is compassion. Animals don't need words to know if someone means them harm or help. They feel it." A medical assistant approached with the supplies, setting them cautiously at the edge of the containment area. Another tossed a thermal blanket, which Michael caught and draped over Thor's massive body. "Let's get you fixed up," Michael said, arranging the supplies within reach. "This next part is going to hurt, but I need you to stay still for me. Can you do that?" Thor huffed out a breath, eyes still fixed on Michael. "I'll take that as a yes." Michael picked up a device designed to drain fluid from injured tissue. "Dr. Reed, I need your guidance. Your understanding of the anatomy will be more precise than mine." Reed hesitated. "Enter the containment area with an injured predator from another world." Every scientific protocol argued against it. Yet the human had done it. If his soft, fragile body could take the risk, what excuse did she have? She stepped through the barrier. Thor's head turned toward her lips, pulling back slightly to reveal dagger-like teeth. Michael's hand immediately pressed firmer against the creature's skull. "She's here to help. She's a friend." Impossibly, Thor relaxed again. Reed activated her scanner with slightly trembling hands. Insertion point is 3 centimeters below the fourth upper limb joint, angle 15 degrees toward the central cavity. Michael sterilized the area, then looked into Thor's eyes. "Deep breath for me, buddy." He inserted the drainage device with practiced efficiency. Thor yelped and jerked, but Michael's other hand stayed steady on the creature's head, and his voice never wavered. "Almost done. You're doing great." Dark fluid drained from Thor's injured organ. The creature's breathing immediately improved, becoming deeper and less labored. "Remarkable," Reed whispered. "It trusted you enough to endure that pain without fighting." "Trust goes both ways," Michael said, already preparing the bone-setting equipment. "I trust him not to hurt me. He trusts me not to hurt him more than necessary. That's the deal." Over the next hour, Michael worked steadily on Thor's injuries. He set the broken limbs, sealed the internal wounds with regenerative compounds, and applied cellular stabilizers to the worst lacerations. Throughout the procedure, he maintained constant physical contact with the creature. One hand always touched Thor's body, providing reassurance. Reed assisted, fascinated by the human's methods. He worked by touch as much as by sight, trusting his instincts in ways no proper scientist ever would. He explained each procedure to Thor as if the creature could understand medical terminology, and perhaps in some way it did. The alien remained calm, allowing treatments that should have been impossible without heavy sedation. "Vital signs stabilizing," reported a technician. "Neural activity shows significantly reduced stress patterns." "He's going to make it," Michael said, relief evident in his voice. He ran his hand gently along Thor's massive head. "You're going to be all right now." Thor made a sound somewhere between a purr and a rumble, pressing his massive head against Michael's chest. The human smiled and placed a reassuring hand on the creature's neck, in a gesture that hours earlier everyone would have considered suicidal. Captain Jackson shook his head in amazement. "I've never seen anything like this. Ever." "Because no one ever tried," Michael replied simply. "Everyone sees the teeth and claws and decides they're too dangerous to approach. But underneath all that, he's just a scared being who needed help." Reed stored her data tablet, thoughtfully observing the scene. "Your methods are highly unconventional, Mr. Hayes, but they work." "They always have." Michael looked down at Thor, now resting peacefully under his continued touch. "I think there's a lot we can learn from each other, Doctor." Thor's tail thumped weakly against the floor, a sign of contentment. Outside the containment field, the scientific staff began to disperse, murmuring among themselves about what they had witnessed. Word would spread quickly throughout the facility. The retired Special Forces operative had done the impossible. He had healed an alien creature deemed too dangerous to approach, using nothing but patience, understanding, and compassion. 2 days passed before Michael allowed himself to leave Thor's side. He had slept on the floor beside the alien, one hand resting on the creature's flank, monitoring each breath and heartbeat. "Your patient is stable," Reed pointed out, reviewing the medical data on her tablet. "There is no logical reason for you to remain here." "He gets stressed when I leave," Michael replied, checking one of Thor's healing wounds. The creature's tail thumped against the floor in response. "Last time I went to get food, his heart rate spiked 40%. Because he has formed an attachment to you." Reed studied the readings. "Fascinating. Their species must have some form of pack bonding similar to canines on Earth." "Maybe," Michael watched Thor's eyes track his movements. "Or maybe he just knows who helped him when everyone else was ready to give up." Reed's expression shifted, revealing a rare moment of uncertainty. I have been researching Earth's history of relationships with predatory species. Your bond with canines is particularly interesting from an evolutionary perspective. We've lived alongside wolves for thousands of years, Michael said, accepting a cup of coffee from an assistant. Eventually, some of them became dogs, became family. It wasn't something we planned, it just happened. Most species would never attempt such bonds, Reed observed. The concept of befriending an apex predator rather than avoiding or eliminating it, it's foreign to logical thought. That's because you're thinking of it as dominance. It's not. It's partnership. Michael looked up at her. Wolves didn't become dogs because we forced them. They chose to stay with us because we offered something they needed: safety, food, companionship. We got the same things back. Both species benefited. And you believe this principle applies to all creatures, even those from another world. Every living being wants the same basic things: safety, sustenance, and someone who understands them. Doesn't matter if they're from Earth or 1,000 light years away. Before Reed could respond, alarms blared throughout the medical bay. Her datapad lit up with an emergency alert. "What's happening?" Michael asked, immediately on alert. Reed's expression tightened as she read the notification. "Incoming emergency, critical condition, species designation, frost." What's a frost? Cold-blooded organism from the craft. Reptilian characteristics. They're extremely difficult to treat due to their specific environmental requirements. Reed was already moving toward the emergency entrance. They also become extremely aggressive when stressed or injured. Michael gave Thor a reassuring pat. "Stay here, buddy. I'll be back." Thor whined softly but settled down, watching Michael leave with what could only be described as concern in those alien eyes. The emergency bay doors opened with a pneumatic hiss. A transport team wheeled in a containment unit larger than Thor's. Inside, a creature that resembled a cross between a crocodile and a monitor lizard thrashed weakly against restraints. Its scales were dull and cracked, a sign of severe dehydration, Michael guessed. One limb hung at an unnatural angle. Behind the transport team walked a tall, lean man in his early 60s. His military posture and hardened features marked him as career special forces. The insignia on his unmarked tactical uniform indicated a rank higher than anyone Michael had yet encountered in the facility. A younger man, early 30s, with similar features, stood slightly behind him, wearing a lab coat with security clearance tags. "You're Hayes," the older man stated flatly, his voice carrying the gravel of someone who'd spent decades issuing orders that couldn't be questioned. "I am," Michael confirmed, standing straighter unconsciously, the military bearing returning in the presence of a superior officer. "Colonel William Pierce, Special Project Division." The introduction was curt. "And this is my son, Lieutenant David Pierce, Xenobiology Security Liaison." The younger man nodded but remained silent, his eyes darting between Michael and the creature in the containment unit. Colonel Pierce's cold gaze returned to Michael. "I understand you've been whispering to our specimens." The way he said it made clear his opinion of such methods. Michael maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. "I've been treating them, sir." Pierce's lip curled slightly. "This is Frost, valuable asset. 3 different medical teams have failed to stabilize it." He gestured to the containment unit. "Show me this miracle method of yours, Hayes, before we lose another specimen." The dismissive tone when referring to the clearly suffering creature sparked something in Michael. He stepped closer to the containment unit, studying the reptilian being inside. Frost was massive, at least 12 feet long. Unlike Thor's warm-blooded mammalian appearance, this creature was clearly reptilian, with iridescent scales that should have been vibrant, but now appeared dull and lifeless. Its breathing was shallow, its movements sluggish. "What's wrong with him?" Michael asked, deliberately using the personal pronoun. "Its biology is incompatible with our treatment methods," Reed explained, checking the readings. "Standard medications have no effect. Temperature regulation is critical but difficult to maintain." Temperature. Michael studied the creature more carefully. "What's the ambient temperature in this room?" "Standard facility temperature, 68 degree." Michael looked at Frost's eyes, dull, unfocused, but still tracking movement, not the eyes of a creature ready to die. "What temperature does a cold-blooded reptile like this need?" Based on our analysis, optimal functioning would require 95 to 100 Brave, Reed replied. So Frost has been cold this entire time, Michael realized aloud. How long? It was recovered 18 days ago, Pierce stated. 18 days of being too cold to properly digest food, too cold to heal, too cold to do anything but barely survive. Michael turned to Pierce. He's not dying from injury. He's dying from being cold. Pierce stepped closer, his expression hardening. The other facilities said temperature was irrelevant, that its symptoms indicated systemic failure. Systemic failure caused by temperature stress, Michael insisted. He kept his eyes on Frost, noting how the creature's head moved, slightly tracking his voice. Reptiles on Earth shut down when they get too cold. Everything slows digestion, healing neural function. They just exist in a state of slow death until something changes their environment. Michael placed his hand near the containment field. Frost's head moved slightly, leaning toward the warmth. He's not just cold, Michael realized. He's lonely. Preposterous, Pierce scoffed. These are not pets, Hayes. They're specimens, potentially valuable military assets or threats. They don't get lonely. Every social species can experience isolation stress, Michael countered. And I'd bet anything Frost's species is social. Look at his eyes. He's seeking connection, not just heat. Pierce's jaw tightened. I've seen enough. Dr. Reed continued with standard protocols. Hayes, your services are no longer required for this specimen. Michael stood his ground. If you continue standard protocols, Frost will die, just like Thor nearly did. That's a risk I'm willing to take, Pierce replied coldly. Colonel, Reed interjected, surprising Michael. Perhaps we should consider Mr. Hayes's assessment. His methods with Thea produced unprecedented results. Results that cannot be quantified, replicated, or weaponized, Pierce countered. I need tangible outcomes. Doctor, not fairy tales about whispering to monsters. Michael felt a surge of anger. They're not monsters, Colonel. They're intelligent beings who've crashed on a strange planet surrounded by creatures they don't understand, being treated like lab specimens instead of survivors. Lieutenant David Pierce shifted uncomfortably, his eyes moving between his father and Michael. For a moment it seemed he might speak, but a sharp glance from the colonel silenced him before he began. Colonel Pierce stepped closer to Michael, voice lowered to a dangerous rumble. Careful, Hayes. Remember your place and who's in command here. With respect, sir, Michael replied evenly. My place is with these creatures, and no one commands compassion. The two men stood locked in silent confrontation, decades of military discipline, meeting an unwavering moral conviction. The standoff was interrupted by Colonel Wilson, who entered with a tablet displaying new security clearances. Colonel Pierce, Wilson announced formally, General Matheson has granted Hayes full consultant status on all recovered species. His methods are to be given priority in treatment protocols. Pierce's face tightened with barely controlled fury. General Matheson is not familiar with the strategic implications of these specimens. The general disagrees, Wilson replied, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. His exact words were, if Hayes can save them, we can learn from them. Dead specimens tell us nothing. Pierce glared at Michael. You have 48 hours to demonstrate measurable improvement in Frost's condition. After that, we return to established protocols. He turned to leave, gesturing sharply for his son to follow. And Hayes, don't get too attached. These creatures aren't here for your rehabilitation hobby. They're here because they represent the greatest scientific and military opportunity or threat in human history. As Pierce departed, Michael turned his attention back to Frost, who had grown more lethargic during the confrontation. Dr. Reed, Michael said firmly, I need this room heated to 98 degrees, immediately moisture content increased to tropical levels, and a heat lamp positioned directly over the containment area. Reed hesitated only briefly before issuing the commands to her staff. As the environmental systems began adjusting, Michael studied Frost more carefully. There's something else, he murmured, watching how the creature's eyes kept tracking between him and the doorway leading to Thor's chamber. Something we're missing. A theory formed in Michael's mind, one that would challenge everything the facility's scientists thought they knew about these beings. But first, he needed to save Frost. As the room temperature rose and the first signs of improved respiration appeared in Frost, a young woman in a lab coat hurried in. No more than 35, Dr. Tiwan. Maya Chen carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone too focused on her work to worry about hierarchy. Her dark eyes quickly assessed the situation as she approached Michael and Reed. "I came as soon as I heard," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent. "You're Michael Hayes. I've been studying Thor's cellular samples. Remarkable regenerative properties." "Dr. Chen is our leading xenobiologist," Reed explained. "She's been analyzing the biological samples from all recovered specimens and finding some interesting patterns," Maya added, studying frost through the containment field. "Their cellular structures suggest biocompatibility across species, something we wouldn't expect from creatures that evolved on different worlds." "Unless they didn't evolve separately," Michael suggested, watching Frost's reactions closely. "What if they're connected somehow?" "That's exactly what I've been theorizing," Maya replied, her eyes lighting up at finding someone who shared her hypothesis. "But I've been overruled on pursuing cross-species interaction studies." "By Colonel Pierce," Reed said quietly. "He insists on studying each specimen in isolation," Maya confirmed. "Standard scientific protocol, but these aren't standard circumstances," Michael finished. He turned to Reed. "I need to bring Thor in here." Reed's expression tightened. Pierce explicitly forbade cross-contamination. "Sometimes you need to push boundaries to make breakthroughs," Michael countered. "That's how science advances, isn't it?" Reed and Maya exchanged glances, a silent negotiation between scientific caution and curiosity. Finally, Reed nodded. "We have 48 hours to save Frost," she said. "Let's make them count." The heat in the treatment chamber had risen to a sweltering 98 degrees, with humidity levels approaching those of a tropical rainforest. Moisture beaded on the reinforced glass of the observation windows, obscuring the view for the scientists watching from the cooler room outside. Michael wiped sweat from his brow as he studied Frost's vitals on the monitoring equipment. Temperature core rising steadily, he noted. Respiration improving, heart rate normalizing. Reed stood beside him, her typically immaculate lab coat now damp with perspiration. Despite her discomfort, her analytical mind remained focused on the data. "Remarkable. Its metabolic functions are reactivating at a rate we haven't observed before." "His metabolic functions," Michael corrected gently. "If we're going to help them, we need to see them as individuals, not specimens." Reed nodded reluctantly. "Force of habit, I suppose." "Science teaches us to maintain objective distance. Sometimes the most scientific approach is to close that distance," Michael replied, turning his attention back to Frost. The massive reptilian alien had shown marked improvement over the past 6 hours. The dullness in his scales had given way to a subtle iridescence, and his movements, while still sluggish, had grown more purposeful. His eyes' vertical slits of deep amber tracked Michael's movements with growing alertness. "I want to try something," Michael said. "Something unconventional." Reed's expression tightened with apprehension. "More unconventional than turning my medical bay into a sauna." Michael smiled despite the tension. "I want to bring Thor in here." "Absolutely not," Reed objected immediately. "Cross-contamination protocols explicitly forbid." "I've been moving between their chambers for hours," Michael interrupted. "If there were contamination concerns, they'd have manifested already." "That's different. You're human. These are two distinct extraterrestrial species with unknown biological compatibility." Michael studied Frost's eyes again, noticing how they kept drifting toward the corridor leading to Thor's chamber. "They know each other," he said quietly. "I can see it in their behavior. Thor has been restless since Frost arrived, and Frost keeps looking in Thor's direction. There's recognition there." "That's a massive assumption based on very limited observation," Reed countered. "Maybe, but what if they were more than just passengers on the same ship? What if they have a relationship, a connection?" Reed's scientific skepticism waged war with her curiosity. "What are you suggesting?" "That advanced spacefaring civilizations might form alliances, friendships, maybe even families across species," Michael hypothesized. "These beings traveled across light years together. It would be stranger if they didn't have connections." Maya, who had been analyzing Frost's blood samples, looked up from her tablet. "Michael's theory has merit. I've been comparing cellular structures from both Thor and Eon and Frost. There are complementary markers in their biochemistry, almost like they evolved to be compatible." "Compatible how?" Reed asked. "Their immune systems don't register each other as threats," Maya explained. It's similar to how certain symbiotic species on Earth can coexist without triggering immune responses. Michael nodded, his suspicions confirmed. They're not just random survivors from the crash. They're connected somehow. The tension in the room was broken by an urgent alert from Michael's communication device. Colonel Wilson's voice came through, terse and urgent. Hayes, we need you in Thor's chamber. Now. Thor was pacing his enclosure, his massive form radiating agitation. The staff had kept a respectful distance, mindful of Michael's instructions, but their concern was evident. The creature that had been calm and docile for days was now growling, his 6 limbs scraping against the floor with enough force to leave marks in the metal. When did this start? Michael asked as he entered. About 30 minutes ago, Wilson replied, keeping his voice low, right after Colonel Pierce visited. Michael's expression darkened. Pierce was here. Why? Standard inspection, or so he claimed. He stood there watching Thor for about 5 minutes, then left without saying much. Thor's been like this ever since. Michael approached the enclosure, speaking softly. Hey, buddy, what's going on? What's got you so worked up? Thor's response was immediate. He moved to the barrier separating them, pressing his massive head against it, eyes fixed on Michael with an intensity that seemed almost desperate. He wants to tell me something, Michael realized. He placed his hand against the barrier, mirroring Thor's position. What is it, boy? What are you trying to say? Thor's head swiveled toward the corridor leading to Frost's chamber, then back to Michael. The message couldn't have been clearer if he'd spoken in English. It's about Frost, Michael said with certainty. They're connected. Thor knows Frost is here and he's worried. Wilson watched skeptically. That's a pretty big leap, Hayes. Is it? Michael challenged. Look at him. Really look. Thor repeated the head movement, this time adding a low whine that seemed impossible from such a massive predator. Wilson's skepticism wavered. I've seen military dogs act like this when their handlers were injured. Exactly, Michael agreed. We need to bring them together. Pierce won't approve, Wilson warned. Pierce isn't here right now, Michael countered, and I'd rather ask forgiveness than permission when a life is at stake. Wilson hesitated, the conflict evident on his weathered face, duty versus what felt right. Finally, his expression hardened into determination. I'll secure the corridor. You have 15 minutes before the shift change. Make it count. The transportation of Thor through the facility's sterile corridors required careful coordination. Wilson had cleared all non-essential personnel and overridden the security protocols that would have automatically logged the movement. Michael walked beside Thor, one hand resting on the alien's massive shoulder. No restraints, no weapons, just trust built over days of care and connection. When they entered Frost's chamber, the reaction was immediate and undeniable. Frost's entire demeanor changed. His head lifted, his eyes widened, and a series of clicks and chirps emerged from his throat. Thor responded with a rumbling sound that vibrated through the floor. They're communicating, Maya whispered, recording the interaction on her tablet. Thor approached Frost cautiously, mindful of the reptilian alien's injured state. What happened next astonished even Michael. Thor stretched out beside Frost, his warmer body pressing against the cold-blooded creature's flank. The effect was almost immediate. Frost's vital signs strengthened his temperature, stabilizing at optimal levels. They're thermally complementary, Reed realized, watching the data stream across her monitors. Thor's higher body heat is helping regulate Frost's temperature more effectively than our environmental controls. Michael smiled. It's not just science, Doctor. It's companionship. They're comforting each other. The moment of discovery was shattered by alarms blaring throughout the facility. Red emergency lights bathed the chamber, and Wilson burst through the door, his expression grim. Pierce knows. He's on his way with security. 2 minutes tops. Michael's mind raced. We need to hide Thor, get him back. Too late. Wilson cut him off. They've locked down the transport corridors. We're trapped here. Reed looked pale. This is a direct violation of containment protocols. Pierce will shut us down. Then we face him, Michael decided. We show him what we've discovered. The chamber door slid open with a hiss of compressed air. Colonel Pierce stepped through, flanked by armed security personnel. His cold eyes took in the scene. Thor curled protectively around Frost, the scientists standing together in a defensive cluster. Lieutenant David Pierce followed behind, his expression conflicted as he observed the aliens' interaction. Containment breach, unauthorized species transfer, protocol violations, Pierce's voice was arctic. Dr. Reed, your authorization is suspended effective immediately. Wilson, you're relieved of duty pending investigation. His gaze fixed on Michael. As for you, Hayes, you have exceeded your consultant status. You're done here. With respect, Colonel, Michael began, keeping his voice steady. What you're seeing is a breakthrough. These beings aren't just random specimens, they're connected. They're helping each other heal. What I'm seeing, Pierce replied coldly, is a civilian compromising a military operation, endangering personnel, and anthropomorphizing potentially dangerous alien organisms. Look at the data, Reed interjected, surprising everyone with her defense. Frost's vitals have improved more in the past 15 minutes than in the 18 days since recovery. This is scientifically significant. Pierce's expression remained unmoved. Science that cannot be controlled is a threat, Doctor. These creatures are assets to be studied, not pets to be coddled. He turned to the security team, separated them, returned Thor to his enclosure. Prepare Frost for transportation to Facility Echo for further study. Echo, Wilson's face paled. That's a weapons research facility. Which is no longer your concern, Mr. Wilson, Pierce replied. Michael stepped forward, placing himself between the security team and the aliens. These beings saved Captain Jackson's team. They're intelligent, social creatures who've shown no aggression when treated with dignity. Separating them now could reverse all the progress we've made. Thor sensed the tension rising to his full imposing height, though he made no aggressive moves. Frost, still weak but alert, emitted a series of clicks that sounded almost like warning signals. You see, Pierce said, gesturing toward the aliens, they're becoming agitated. This proves my point. They're responding to the threat in the room, Michael countered. And right now, Colonel, that's you. The tension stretched to breaking point, neither man willing to back down. Lieutenant David Pierce looked increasingly uncomfortable, his eyes moving between his father and the aliens with growing concern. It was Maya who broke the stalemate, stepping forward with her tablet. Colonel Pierce, I've been analyzing the biological samples from both species. Their DNA contains sequencing we could study for years without fully understanding. But more importantly, they share markers that suggest they were deliberately engineered to be compatible with each other. Pierce's attention shifted slightly. Engineered by whom? By whoever created their ship, I'd imagine, Maya replied. The point is, they were designed to function as a unit. Separating them isn't just cruel, it's scientifically unsound. We'd be destroying the very thing we're trying to study. Pierce's calculating mind visibly weighed this new information. Scientific discovery versus military protocol, knowledge versus control. You have 24 hours, he finally declared. Show me measurable, quantifiable results that justify this breach of protocol. If you can't, both specimens will be transported to Echo for separate study, and everyone in this room will face serious consequences. He turned to leave, then paused. And Hayes, step out of line again, and you'll find yourself in a very deep hole, regardless of who your friends in high places might be. The door slid shut behind him, leaving an uneasy silence. That went well, Wilson muttered sarcastically. We have 24 hours, Michael said, already turning back to Thor and Frost. Let's make them count. The next day passed in a blur of activity. Michael barely left the chamber, working tirelessly with Reed and Maya to document every interaction between Thor and Frost. They monitored vital signs, recorded communication patterns, and analyzed blood samples hourly to track improvements. The results were remarkable. Frost's recovery accelerated dramatically in Thor's presence. The reptilian alien's metabolism stabilized, his wounds began closing at twice the expected rate, and his neural activity showed patterns consistent with higher cognitive function. More fascinating still was the developing relationship between Michael and the aliens. Thor had already formed a strong bond with him, but now Frost began showing similar trust, allowing Michael to approach and treat his injuries without resistance. It's like Thor vouched for you, Maya observed, watching Michael apply a healing compound to one of Frost's wounds. Pack recognition, Michael agreed. Thor accepted me, so Frost does too. It's common behavior among social predators on Earth. Reed was updating their findings, her earlier skepticism giving way to genuine scientific enthusiasm. We're establishing baseline communication patterns. They use not just vocalizations, but also body language, scent markers, and possibly some form of bioelectric signaling we're just beginning to detect. As the 24-hour deadline approached, Wilson entered with news. Pierce has called a review panel, full board. You'll be presenting your findings in 1 hour. Who's on the panel? Michael asked. The facility's senior leadership, scientific division, military oversight, intelligence, and Wilson hesitated. And what? Michael pressed. General Matheson is attending via secure link. This just got kicked upstairs in a big way. Michael absorbed this information, understanding its significance. Pierce is covering himself. If this goes sideways, he wants witnesses that he followed procedure. Or he's genuinely concerned about security implications, Wilson suggested. These are the first confirmed extraterrestrial intelligent life forms on Earth. The stakes don't get much higher. Michael looked back at Thor and Frost, who were resting peacefully together in the modified enclosure. They're not weapons or threats. They're refugees, survivors. You might believe that, Wilson said quietly, but the rest of the world will see them as either saviors or destroyers. There's no middle ground with something this big. As they prepared to leave, Lieutenant David Pierce entered the chamber, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Hayes, he said in a low voice, I need to talk to you. My father's planning something. After the review panel, regardless of the outcome, he's ordered a specialized gas to be introduced into the ventilation system of both containment areas. Michael tensed. What kind of gas? A neural suppressant designed specifically for their biology, based on Dr. Chen's research. The young man's face was tight with moral conflict. It won't kill them, but it will effectively lobotomize them, make them docile, controllable. Using my research without authorization, Maya's voice was sharp with anger. That's not just unethical, it's dangerous. The compounds are experimental, untested. Why are you telling us this? Wilson asked, studying the lieutenant with experienced eyes. David Pierce straightened, decision made. Because what my father is doing is wrong. I became a scientist to help people, not to weaponize intelligence. He handed Michael a security keycard. This will give you access to the lower levels, where they're keeping the ship. Michael took the card, understanding the magnitude of the lieutenant's choice. You're risking your career, possibly more. Some things matter more than a career, David replied, echoing Michael's own beliefs. My father fought in Vietnam. He came back, changed, obsessed with security, with American dominance. He can't see these beings as anything but potential weapons or threats. Thank you, Michael said, gripping the young man's shoulder. This won't be forgotten. The review panel convened in the facility's main conference chamber, a room Michael hadn't seen before. It was larger and more imposing than the briefing room, with tiered seating arranged in a semicircle facing a central presentation area. Screens lined the walls, displaying security feeds, data readouts, and one large monitor showing General Matheson's stern face. Michael stood beside Reed and Maya, facing a panel of 12 senior officials. Colonel Pierce sat at the center, his expression unreadable. Wilson had been barred from the proceedings due to his suspended status, but had promised to be ready when needed. Dr. Reed, Pierce began. Please present your findings regarding the unauthorized integration of specimens, Thor and Frost. Reed stepped forward, activating the holographic display. Over the past 24 hours, we've observed remarkable progress in the recovery of both specimens. She corrected herself, glancing at Michael. Both individuals, Frost, who had been in critical condition for 18 days despite our best efforts, has shown 87% improvement across all measurable health indicators. She displayed charts showing dramatic upward trends in vital signs, cellular regeneration, and neural activity. More significantly, we've documented over 200 distinct communication exchanges between Thor and Frost, suggesting a sophisticated language system. They appear to share information about their environment, their physical condition, and potentially their histories. Pierce leaned forward. And what tangible benefits does this provide to our research objectives? It was Maya who answered. Colonel, we've isolated compound sequences in their biology that could revolutionize medical treatment. Thor's cellular regeneration rate exceeds anything we've seen in terrestrial organisms by a factor of 10. Frost's ability to regulate metabolic processes could lead to breakthroughs in treating human conditions from hypothermia to stroke. Furthermore, Reed continued, understanding their communication methods could provide insights into their technology, their origin, and potentially their intentions. Their intentions, echoed a stern-faced woman whom Michael hadn't met before. That's precisely the concern, isn't it? We have no idea whether these creatures represent an advanced party escape specimens or some form of biological weapon. Or refugees, Michael interjected, speaking for the first time. All eyes turned to him. Mr. Hayes, Pierce said coldly, you're here as a consultant on animal behavior, not interstellar diplomacy. With respect, Colonel Hall, Michael replied, these aren't animals in the way you're suggesting. They're intelligent beings with social structures, communication systems, and emotional responses comparable to our own. He stepped forward, taking control of the holographic display. What you're seeing isn't just biological compatibility. It's a relationship. Thor and Frost recognize each other as individuals. They protect each other. They communicate complex ideas. Most importantly, they've demonstrated altruism. Thor risked his life to save Captain Jackson's team with no benefit to himself. The room fell silent as Michael's words hung in the air. A woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair, pulled into a severe bun, stood up from the panel. Mr. Hayes, I'm Dr. Rebecca Thompson, Director of Xenobiology at Harvard. Your claims about these beings' intelligence are extraordinary. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I agree completely, Doctor, Michael replied respectfully, which is why I invite you to witness their behavior yourself, not through video feeds or data reports, but in person. Thompson's eyebrows rose. You're suggesting I enter a containment area with potentially dangerous alien life forms. I'm suggesting you observe beings who have demonstrated consistent, non-aggressive behavior when treated with respect. Michael corrected. If you're concerned about safety, I'll be with you the entire time. Thompson studied him with shrewd eyes. You truly believe what you're saying, don't you? That these are not just sentient, but sapient beings. I do. And I believe that any scientist who observes them without preconceptions will reach the same conclusion. General Matheson spoke from the monitor. Mr. Hayes, you have considerable experience with dangerous predators. In your professional assessment, do these creatures pose a threat to human security? Michael chose his words carefully. Sir, any intelligent being can pose a threat if threatened. A cornered house cat will fight back if it feels endangered. These beings are no different. Treat them with respect and understanding, they respond in kind. Treat them as threats or weapons, and we risk creating exactly what we fear. The general's weathered face remained impassive. And you're certain they can distinguish between threat and non-threat? Yes, sir. They've consistently shown the ability to differentiate between individuals who mean them harm and those who don't. They remember faces' actions and intentions. Pierce interrupted. This is all speculation based on anthropomorphizing alien behavior. It's observation based on decades of experience, Michael countered firmly. These beings saved human lives when they had every reason to view us as threats. They've cooperated with treatment when approached with respect. They've formed bonds not just with each other, but with humans who've shown them kindness. He turned to address the entire panel. We have an unprecedented opportunity here, not just for scientific discovery, but for first contact done right. We can approach these beings as potential allies, learn from them, help them heal and return home. Or we can treat them as specimens to be dissected and weapons to be replicated and risk everything that choice entails. The room fell silent again. Michael could see the impact of his words on some faces, uncertainty, consideration, even a flicker of hope. Others, including Pierce, remained stone-faced and skeptical. It was Dr. Thompson who broke the silence, surprising everyone. I would like to observe these beings directly as Mr. Hayes suggests, not through monitors or reports, but in person. Pierce's jaw tightened. That would violate security protocols. I have sufficient clearance, Thompson countered smoothly. And as the senior xenobiologist present, my professional assessment would carry significant weight in these proceedings. General Matheson nodded on the screen. Granted, Dr. Thompson, you will observe the aliens directly accompanied by Mr. Hayes and appropriate security personnel. The panel adjourned temporarily while Thompson, Michael, and a minimal security detail made their way to the containment chamber. As they walked, Thompson spoke in a low voice. I've spent 40 years studying theoretical exobiology, Mr. Hayes. The possibility of extraterrestrial life has been my life's work. but I never expected to see it in my lifetime. And now that you have, Michael asked, now I'm faced with the greatest scientific responsibility of my career, she replied soberly. To be objective without being cold. To see what is truly there, not what I hope or fear to see. When they entered the chamber, Thor and Frost were resting peacefully. Thor's head lifted at their approach, immediately alert but not aggressive. Frost's scales shifted color slightly, a reaction they were beginning to recognize as curiosity. They're aware, Thompson noted her clinical tone belied by the wonder in her eyes, fully conscious of our arrival. They recognize me, Michael explained, but they're assessing you. New person, new scent, new energy. Thompson watched as Thor rose and approached the containment field, studying her with those intelligent amber eyes. The cranial structure suggests advanced neural capacity, she observed, and the eye movement patterns indicate complex processing. They're trying to determine if you're a threat, Michael explained. Notice how Thor is positioning himself between us and Frost. That's protective behavior. Social hierarchy, Thompson murmured, or family bonds. She stepped closer to the field, her scientific caution warring with natural curiosity. Michael made a subtle gesture, and Thor relaxed visibly. I've indicated you're not a threat, he explained. Watch what happens now. Thor made a series of vocalizations toward Frost, who responded with clicks and chirps. Then, to Thompson's visible astonishment, Thor approached the field directly in front of her and lowered his massive head in what could only be described as a greeting. Remarkable, she whispered. Absolutely remarkable. Would you like to enter the containment area? Michael asked quietly. Experience their presence directly. Thompson hesitated only briefly before nodding. Yes, I must. Michael instructed the security personnel to remain outside, then helped Thompson through the containment field entry point. Inside, he guided her through the same approach he'd used himself, slow movements, non-threatening posture, no direct eye contact. Speak softly, he advised. They respond to tone as much as words. Thompson, to her credit, followed his instructions perfectly. When Thor approached her, she remained steady, allowing the massive alien to examine her scent and assess her presence. Hello, she said quietly. I'm Rebecca. I've waited my entire life to meet someone like you. Thor made a rumbling sound that they had come to recognize as greeting or acknowledgement. Frost, still weaker but improving, clicked softly from his resting place. May I, Thompson asked, gesturing toward Thor's massive form. Go ahead, Michael encouraged. He'll let you know if he's uncomfortable. With the careful precision of a lifetime scientist, Thompson extended her hand toward Thor's flank. The alien remained still, allowing the touch. The moment her fingers made contact with his fur, Thompson's professional demeanor cracked slightly, revealing the wonder beneath. The texture, it's unlike anything I've felt before, she marveled. And the warmth. The bioelectric field is perceptible even without instruments. She spent the next 30 minutes observing both aliens up close, making notes on their behaviors, reactions, and interactions. Michael guided her through safe approaches to Frost, explaining the differences in how the reptilian alien communicated compared to Thor. When they finally exited the containment area, Thompson's face had transformed. The stern academic skepticism had given way to something more profound, the face of a scientist who had just witnessed the confirmation of her life's work. Mr. Hayes, she said quietly as they walked back to the conference room, in 40 years of scientific pursuit, I have never been so glad to have my assumptions challenged. What you've achieved with these beings, it's not just groundbreaking, it's paradigm shifting. When the review panel reconvened, Thompson stood before her colleagues with newfound conviction. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, I entered that containment area as a skeptic. I believe that Mr. Hayes, while well-intentioned, was projecting human characteristics onto alien biology. She paused, collecting her thoughts. I was wrong. What I observed was unquestionably intelligence communication and social bonding of a sophistication that cannot be dismissed as mere instinct or conditioned response. These beings are not just sentient, they are sapient. They are persons by any meaningful definition of the term. Colonel Pierce's face darkened. Dr. Thompson, with respect to your credentials, a single observational session hardly constitutes. Colonel, Thompson interrupted firmly, I have spent 4 decades studying theoretical alien biology. I know the difference between wishful thinking and empirical observation. What I witnessed cannot be explained by any model that denies these beings' personhood. She turned to address the entire panel. I recommend in the strongest possible terms that Thor and Frost be recognized as diplomatic entities rather than research subjects, that all invasive testing be halted immediately, that Mr. Hayes's methods of communication and care be adopted as standard protocol. The room erupted in murmurs and objections. Pierce's face had gone from dark to thunderous. General Matheson's voice cut through the case. I've heard enough to make a preliminary determination. The biological connection between these creatures and their potential for communication with humans represents a significant opportunity. Colonel Pierce, I'm authorizing continued study under the current protocols established by Dr. Reed and Mr. Hayes. Pierce's face darkened, but he nodded stiffly. Understood, sir. However, the general continued, security remains paramount. Mr. Hayes, Dr. Reed, you will report directly to me on a daily basis. Any significant developments, particularly any that might suggest communication about their origins or their ship's capabilities, are to be flagged immediately. Yes, sir, Michael acknowledged. One final note, Matheson added, his expression grave. What happens in this facility remains classified at the highest level. The existence of these beings, your research, all of it, stays within these walls. Is that clear to everyone? Nods circled the room. Good, I'll expect your first report at 0800 tomorrow. The screen went dark. Pierce rose, his displeasure evident despite his rigid military bearing. You heard the general, continue your work. But make no mistake, this isn't over. He left the room without another word, his security team following close behind. Colonel Wilson, who had been waiting outside, approached Michael as the panel dispersed. You just made an enemy for life, Hayes. Wouldn't be the first time, Michael replied, watching Pierce's retreating back. Reminds me of some officers I knew in Fallujah, so focused on the mission, they forgot what we were fighting for. Pierce doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive, Wilson warned, his voice low. He lost most of his unit in Vietnam, ambushed near the DMZ, been obsessed with security and American dominance ever since. Watch yourself. I'm more concerned about Thor and Frost right now, Michael said. We need to get back to them. As they headed back toward the medical wing, Michael shared Lieutenant Pierce's warning about the gas. We need to secure the ventilation system, Wilson agreed. I'll lock down access and set up alerts for any unauthorized changes. And we need to prepare for the worst, Michael added. If Pierce is willing to go this far, he won't stop because of one review panel. When they reached the medical chamber, they found Maya already there working intently at a console while Dr. Thompson spoke with Reed, comparing notes and observations. I've been analyzing their communication patterns, Maya explained as Michael approached. There's a structure to it, a syntax. It's not just emotional signaling, it's language. Can we learn it? Michael asked. Maybe, Maya replied, with time and the right approach. Thompson joined them, her eyes bright with scientific excitement. Mr. Hayes, your methods have achieved more in days than traditional scientific protocols would have in years. I'd like to stay and assist if you'll have me. We need all the help we can get, Doctor, Michael replied, especially from someone who understands what's at stake. Thompson nodded soberly. The first contact between humanity and another intelligent species. The precedent we set here could determine our cosmic future. Michael approached the containment field where Thor and Frost were watching the humans with evident interest. Thor rose and moved to meet him, mirroring his position from the other side of the barrier. We're going to figure this out, buddy, Michael said quietly. We're going to learn how to talk to each other. Thor made a rumbling sound that for a moment almost seemed like an attempt to mimic human speech. Wilson, who had been checking security protocols on a nearby terminal, looked up in surprise. Did he just try to talk? Michael finished. I think he did. In that moment, despite the looming threat from Pierce, despite the weight of responsibility on their shoulders, a flicker of hope ignited in the chamber. Perhaps Michael thought there was a way forward after all. Over the next 3 days, their work progressed at an astonishing pace. With Thompson's expertise added to the team, they developed a more systematic approach to documenting and interpreting the aliens' communication methods. Maya focused on the biological aspects, studying the specialized organs that allowed Thor and Frost to exchange bioelectric signals. Reed concentrated on their physiology, developing a deeper understanding of how their bodies functioned and healed. Michael remained the primary point of contact, spending hours each day in direct interaction with both aliens. They had been moved to a larger shared habitat where they could move more freely, though still within the facility's secure perimeter. The improved conditions led to marked progress in their recovery and willingness to communicate. Most fascinating was their discovery that both Thor and Frost seemed to be actively trying to learn human communication patterns. They began mimicking simple sounds, associating them with specific actions or objects. When Michael said water, Frost would look toward the water dispenser. When he said rest, Thor would settle down in his designated sleeping area. They're not just learning our language, Thompson observed on the third day. They're teaching us theirs too. It was true, Michael had begun to recognize patterns in their vocalizations and gestures. A specific rumble from Thor always meant greeting. A particular click pattern from Frost indicated curiosity or questioning. Slowly, word by word, sound by sound, they were building a bridge between species. On the fourth day, Lieutenant David Pierce sought out Michael during a rare break. The young man looked haggard, his eyes shadowed with worry. "My father's gone quiet," he said without preamble. "Too quiet. He's locked himself in meetings with security personnel I don't recognize." "Military, Mom?" Wilson asked, immediately alert. "I don't think so. No insignia, no standard protocols. Private contractors, maybe." "Mercenaries," Wilson translated grimly. "Deniable assets." Michael's mind raced through possibilities. Your father wouldn't risk defying a direct order from Matheson. Unless he believed he was protecting national security, David countered. He's convinced himself these beings represent an existential threat, that communicating with them will only make us vulnerable. "How much time do we have?" "I don't know. Days, maybe hours." David hesitated. "There's something else. They've been studying the ship, making progress on accessing its systems." "Without the aliens?" Maya asked, surprised. "They've been using biological samples, trying to trigger recognition protocols in the ship's security systems." Michael exchanged glances with Wilson. This changed everything. If Pierce gained control of alien technology without the ethical constraints of communicating with its owners, "We need to move up our timetable," Michael decided. "Dr. Thompson, where are we on the translation matrix?" "Rudimentary at best," she admitted. "We can communicate basic concepts, needs warnings, nothing complex like intentions or histories." "It will have to be enough." Michael turned to Wilson. "How quickly can you get us access to the ship?" "With David's key card and my override codes, 10 minutes, no alarms. But after that, we're on borrowed time." Michael nodded, decision made. "Tonight then, after second shift change when staffing is minimal." "What exactly are you planning?" Reed asked, her scientific caution resurfacing. "To give Thor and Frost access to their own technology," Michael explained, "before Pierce can weaponize it." "That's a massive risk," Reed warned. "We have no idea what capabilities that ship might have." "And that's exactly why it should be in the hands of its rightful owners," Michael countered, "not someone who sees them as threats to be controlled." The group fell silent, each weighing the implications of what Michael was proposing. It wasn't just breaking protocol anymore, it was actively subverting a military operation. "I'm in, Maya said finally. "What they've done to deserve this. How they've trusted us despite everything. We owe them this much." "I'll help," David added quietly. "My father's wrong about this. I won't let him turn first contact into a weapon." One by one, they all agreed. Even Reed, despite her scientific caution, recognized that the ethical imperative outweighed protocol. That night, as the facility settled into the quieter rhythms of third shift, they put their plan into motion. Wilson used his security clearance and David's key card to create a maintenance corridor through the facility's less monitored sections. Michael and Maya prepared Thor and Frost, explaining as best they could what was happening. "Ship," Michael said, one of the words they'd established in their rudimentary shared vocabulary. "We go to ship." Thor made the rumbling sound they'd learned meant understanding or agreement. Frost's scales shifted to the iridescent pattern that indicated anticipation. The journey through the facility's maintenance tunnels was tense and painstaking. Thor and Frost moved with surprising stealth for creatures their size, seeming to understand intuitively the need for quiet. Wilson led the way, using his tablet to monitor security feeds and redirect patrols. David brought up the rear, watching for any sign of pursuit. They reached the hangar without incident, almost too easily, Michael thought, with soldiers' instinct for ambush. The vast space housed the alien craft, its sleek form illuminated by subdued lighting. Scientists' workstations surrounded it, tools and monitoring equipment, indicating ongoing efforts to breach its secrets. "We need to hurry," Wilson whispered. "Too exposed here." As they approached the ship, Thor and Frost's behavior changed dramatically. Their postures straightened, their movements became more purposeful and coordinated. They were home in a sense, surrounded by the familiar technology of their own civilization. Frost moved to what appeared to be a featureless section of the hull, producing a series of complex vocalizations. To everyone's astonishment, the ship responded, lights flickering across its surface in patterns that seemed to answer Frost's calls. "They're communicating with it," Maya whispered in awe. "The ship is alive, or at least semi-sentient." Thor joined in, adding deeper tones to Frost's higher-pitched sounds. The ship's response intensified, sections of the hull reconfiguring at the molecular level, creating what appeared to be an opening. "Incredible," Thompson breathed. "Molecular manipulation at vocal command." Michael took a step toward the opening, but Thor made a warning sound, placing one massive limb in his path. The meaning was clear. Wait, the ship's entry continued to form the opening, growing large enough to admit the aliens. Thor made a gesture toward Michael, then toward the ship, an invitation. "They want us to enter with them," Michael realized. "Is that safe?" Reed asked. "Safer than staying here," Wilson replied, checking his tablet. "Security just registered an unauthorized access to the hangar. We've got minutes at best." Michael turned to the others. "No one has to come. This is my decision, my responsibility." "We're with you," Maya said firmly. The others nodded in agreement. One by one they entered the alien craft, Thor and Frost leading the way. Inside, the environment was unlike anything human technology had created. Surfaces shifted from solid to transparent based on proximity. Lighting emanated not from fixtures, but from the structure itself. The air felt different, richer somehow, carrying scents reminiscent of forests and oceans. Thor and Frost moved with renewed vigor, clearly energized by their native environment. They approached what appeared to be a central chamber where control interfaces shimmered into existence at their approach. "They know how to operate it," Maya realized, watching in fascination. "They're not just passengers, they're crew." Frost placed a clawed appendage against one of the interfaces. The ship hummed to life systems, activating throughout the vessel. Holographic displays materialized, showing exterior views of the hangar security forces beginning to assemble outside. "Can they fly it?" Wilson asked, eyeing the gathering security with concern. Thor turned to Michael, making a series of vocalizations they had documented but never fully understood. He repeated them slower, more deliberate, then gestured toward the control interface. "He wants you to do something," Thompson suggested, watching the interaction closely. Michael approached cautiously. "What do you need me to do, buddy?" Thor guided Michael's hand toward the interface. The moment his palm made contact, a jolt of energy surged through him. Not painful but intense, like every cell in his body had been simultaneously awakened. Images flooded his mind. Stars, planets, vast nebulae, navigational data, he realized. But also faces, other beings like Thor and Frost. But also creatures utterly unlike anything on Earth. Communities. Families. A civilization. "Michael." Maya's concerned voice seemed distant. "Michael, are you all right?" He blinked, the connection broken but the knowledge lingering. "They're refugees," he said softly. "Their world was dying. They were part of an evacuation fleet. This ship was a scout vessel sent ahead to find safe harbor." "How do you know this?" Reed demanded. "They showed me." Michael turned to Thor and Frost, seeing them truly for the first time, not as specimens or even patients, but as people fighting for survival. They can share memories, experiences through direct neural interface. The ship's systems continued activating displays showing more security forces assembling outside. A familiar figure strode to the front, Colonel Pierce, his face a mask of cold fury as he issued orders to his team. "We need to move," Wilson urged. "Whatever you learned, whatever they are, it won't matter if Pierce turns this ship into a crater." Michael looked to Thor, understanding flowing between them without words. "They can activate the ship's defensive systems, but they need my help." "Why yours?" Reed asked. "Because I'm the only one they trust completely," Michael replied simply. He turned back to the interface. "Show me what to do." Thor guided him through a sequence of interactions with the ship's systems. Each touch brought new understanding, as if the knowledge was being transferred directly into his consciousness. Michael felt himself becoming a conduit between two worlds, human determination and alien technology, melding in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. Outside security forces had surrounded the craft, setting up heavy weapons designed to penetrate even the most advanced materials. Among them, Michael spotted David Pierce clearly trying to delay the operation while appearing to comply with his father's orders. Inside, a shimmering field of energy began to coalesce around the ship's hull, a defensive barrier unlike anything in human technological understanding. The ship's communication system activated, allowing Michael to broadcast his voice across the facility. Colonel Pierce, this is Hayes. The ship is now secured with defensive systems beyond anything in our arsenal, but we're not your enemy. Pierce's voice came back tight with controlled rage. You've committed treason, Hayes, aiding potential hostile aliens against your own species. They're not hostile, Michael countered. They're refugees. Their world was dying. They were searching for safe harbor, not conquest. A convenient story they fed you, Pierce sneered, while accessing their weapon systems. If they wanted to use weapons, Colonel, they'd have done so 18 days ago when you first captured them. Instead, Thor saved human lives at risk to his own. For a moment, Pierce seemed to hesitate. Then his expression hardened again. You have 30 seconds to exit that vessel before I authorize lethal force. Michael glanced at Thor, who made a gesture toward another interface panel. Understanding flowed between them without words. Michael placed his hand on the panel and a new holographic display appeared, showing not the hangar, but what appeared to be deep space stars streaking past at impossible speeds. What is this? Reed asked, studying the display. A message, Michael realized, from the evacuation fleet. The display shifted, showing more ships like theirs carrying thousands of beings from what appeared to be a dying world, a sun growing unstable, atmospheric degradation, mass evacuation. Not an invasion force, but refugees fleeing extinction. We need to show this to Pierce, Michael decided, to everyone outside. Thor made a sound of agreement, interfacing with the ship's systems. The external hull of the craft suddenly became transparent from the outside, revealing the interior to the assembled security forces. Simultaneously, the holographic display expanded, projecting the images of the refugee fleet into the hangar itself. Outside, the security teams faltered, weapons lowering slightly as they witnessed the unmistakable evidence of a civilization in crisis, of families being evacuated, of desperate flight rather than hostile intent. Michael spoke again through the communication system. This is what they're running from, Colonel, not what they're planning against us. They need help, not fear, understanding, not weapons. Pierce stood motionless, his face unreadable as the images played around him. For a long moment, the hangar was silent, except for the soft hum of the holographic displays. Then a new voice joined the conversation, General Matheson striding into the hangar with a cadre of high-ranking officers. Stand down, Colonel, Matheson ordered. All personnel stand down. Pierce's face twisted. Sir Hayes has compromised facility security, given aliens access to their technology, and in doing so revealed their true nature and intentions. Matheson cut him off. Sometimes, Pierce, the greatest security comes not from weapons, but from understanding. He turned toward the ship, addressing Michael directly. Mr. Hayes, I received Dr. Thompson's full report an hour ago. I've been monitoring this situation since you entered the hangar. What you've discovered, it changes everything. Sir, Michael questioned, uncertain of the general's meaning. The president has been briefed, Matheson explained. A decision has been made at the highest level. If these beings are indeed refugees seeking sanctuary, then the United States will offer diplomatic recognition and protection. The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembled personnel. Pierce's face drained of color. With all due respect, General, he began. The security implications are my responsibility, Matheson finished firmly, as is the moral obligation to help those in need. It's what separates us from those we've fought throughout history, Colonel. He addressed Michael again. Mr. Hayes, please assure our guests that they are no longer prisoners. They are now officially under diplomatic protection. Inside the ship, Thor and Frost had been monitoring the exchange, their postures shifting from defensive readiness to cautious hope. Michael turned to them, trying to convey the meaning of what had just happened. Safe, he said, using one of their established shared words. You are safe now. Thor made a rumbling sound that needed no translation relief, perhaps even gratitude. Frost's scales shifted to a vibrant pattern, they had never seen before radiating from his center outward in waves of iridescent color. Thompson, who had been documenting every interaction, whispered in awe, "I believe that's their expression of joy." Michael felt something tight in his chest loosen a tension he hadn't fully acknowledged until it released. After decades of military service and years of working with Earth's predators, he had found his greatest purpose in becoming the bridge between two worlds. As the defensive field lowered and the ship's entry reconfigured to allow them to exit, Michael placed a hand on Thor's massive shoulder. The alien did something unprecedented. He mimicked the gesture, placing his own giant paw gently on Michael's shoulder in return. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," Michael said softly, "teaching each other, learning to live together." Thor made a sound that for a moment almost seemed to form a word. Not in English, not in his own language, but something in between the first true attempt at cross-species speech. The whisper protocol had evolved from a simple method of calming a frightened alien to the foundation of humanity's first steps into a larger cosmic community. And it had all begun with 5 simple words that transcended the stars. "Take it slow, friend. I'm here." 6 weeks after the confrontation in the hangar, the facility once known as Project Sentinel had transformed dramatically. The sterile military installation had evolved into something unprecedented in human history, a diplomatic outpost for interstellar relations. The underground complex still maintained strict security protocols, but the atmosphere had shifted from containment to cooperation. Living quarters for Thor and Frost had been redesigned to accommodate their physiological needs while providing comfort and dignity. Scientists worked alongside them as colleagues rather than studying them as specimens. In a large chamber that had once housed weapons testing equipment, Michael Hayes stood before a group of 20 individuals, a mix of scientists, military personnel, and government officials. Each wore a small translating device developed by Maya Chen, using the bioelectric principles they discovered in Thor and Frost's communication organs. "Remember," Michael instructed, "the translators help, but they're not perfect. Body language matters as much as words. Tone matters. Intent matters." He demonstrated a greeting gesture they had learned from Thor, an open palm held at chest-level, fingers splayed. "This means peace and openness," he explained. "When meeting them for the first time, always start with this." At the back of the room, Colonel James Wilson watched with quiet approval. Since the confrontation with Pierce, he had been officially reinstated and promoted to oversee security for the newly designated First Contact Division. His Vietnam-era tactical experience had proven invaluable in restructuring protocols to balance security needs with diplomatic considerations. "How's the class coming along?" Dr. Rebecca Thompson asked, joining Wilson at the observation window. "Hayes is a natural teacher," Wilson replied. "Better than half the instructors I had at Quantico." Thompson nodded. "He's bridging more than just species. He's bridging mindsets, military, scientific, diplomatic." She paused, studying Michael's confident movements as he demonstrated proper approach posture for greeting Frost. "Have you heard from Pierce?" Wilson's expression darkened slightly. "Reassigned to a desk job at the Pentagon. Effectively neutralized but not forgotten. He still has allies in high places. And his son, Lieutenant Pierce, made his choice, stood against his father for what he believed was right." Wilson's weathered face showed respect. "That takes a special kind of courage." The door slid open and General Matheson entered, accompanied by a distinguished-looking woman in her 70s, wearing the uniform of a high-ranking diplomat. "Dr. Thompson, Colonel Wilson," Matheson greeted them. "Allow me to introduce Ambassador Caroline Reeves, the President's personal selection to head our diplomatic efforts." They exchanged courtesies, and Thompson guided the ambassador to the observation window. Below, Michael had completed the basic instruction and was now introducing the trainees to Thor and Frost, who had entered from their living quarters. "Remarkable," Ambassador Reeves breathed, watching the aliens interact comfortably with the humans. "Truly remarkable." "Wait until you meet them," Thompson said with a smile. "Thor has quite the sense of humor once you learn to recognize it. And Frost is a natural mathematician. He's been helping our physicists understand concepts we've barely touched. And they're definitely sentient, sapient person-level intelligence." Reeves asked her diplomatic training, evident in how she sought precise classifications. "Without question," Thompson confirmed, "they possess language, abstract reasoning, cultural traditions, technological proficiency, and moral agency. By any meaningful standard, they're people, just not human people." Ambassador Reeves nodded thoughtfully. The implications are staggering, not just scientifically, but philosophically, religiously, legally. Every aspect of human civilization will need to expand its definitions. That's why we requested someone with your background, Ambassador, General Matheson explained. Your work on international human rights law gives you the framework to help us develop interspecies rights law. A challenge I never anticipated, Reeves admitted, but one I accept with honor. Below, Michael was demonstrating the latest advancement in their communication methods, a simplified sign language they had developed that incorporated elements of human gesture and the aliens' natural movements. Thor followed along his six-limbed body, adapting the gestures with surprising grace. Mr. Hayes is the key to all this, isn't he? Reeves observed. More than you know, Wilson replied. Without him, we'd still be treating them as specimens or threats. He saw their personhood when the rest of us saw only the alien. I'd like to speak with him, Reeves decided. And with Thor and Frost, of course. They've been expecting you, Thompson replied with a smile. Thor especially has been practicing the formal greeting. It's quite something to witness. As they made their way down to the main chamber, Maya Chen approached, tablet in hand. General, we've received another signal. Same pattern as before. Matheson's expression tightened slightly. How close? Just beyond lunar orbit. Holding position. The implications were clear to everyone. Since establishing communication with Thor and Frost, they had detected periodic signals from space evidence that the refugee fleet was monitoring the situation, waiting to learn the fate of their scout ship. They're getting closer, Wilson noted, testing our response. Or growing concerned about their people, Michael suggested, having joined the conversation after dismissing his class. It's been almost 2 months since they lost contact with the scout ship. Wouldn't you send search parties? Thor approached, having noticed the serious conversation. His massive form still intimidated new personnel, but those who worked with him regularly had learned to see past the predatory appearance to the intelligent being within. He made a series of now familiar vocalizations, which Maya's translator rendered into approximate English. Sky family looking. Worried. Need answer. He's right, Michael agreed. We can't keep stalling. At some point, we need to make a decision, invite them in, or tell them to stay away. Ambassador Reeves studied Thor with diplomatic calculation. How many ships are we talking about? How many refugees? Michael turned to Thor, who used their developing sign language to convey numbers too large for their limited shared vocabulary. Maya's translator interpreted. Approximately 27 large vessels carrying between 5,000 and 7,000 individuals each. Various species, all from the same solar system. 150,000 refugees, Reeves calculated aloud, her diplomatic experience immediately assessing the scope. That's a significant number. They don't all need to come to Earth, Michael clarified. Thor has explained that they're seeking multiple suitable planets across this sector of the galaxy. Earth is just one potential haven. Even so, the logistics of hosting even a fraction of that number, Matheson began, are complicated, Michael acknowledged. But think of what we gain. Their technology alone could advance us by centuries. Their medical knowledge, Thor's species can regenerate limbs, Frost can enter suspended animation at will. The exchange would benefit humanity immeasurably. And if some of them have less peaceful intentions than Thor and Frost, Wilson asked the security officer, in him still vigilant. Thor made a series of gestures which the translator rendered, "My people honor life, respect worlds that welcome, give knowledge, take nothing not offered." A formal diplomatic principle, Reeves asked, intrigued. Thor confirmed with a gesture of affirmation they had come to recognize. The massive alien then did something unexpected. He lowered his imposing body in what appeared to be a bow of respect toward the ambassador. "I believe I've just received my first alien diplomatic greeting," Reeves said with a smile, "and I haven't even presented my credentials." The tension in the room eased slightly. Thor's dignified behavior had made more of an impression than hours of briefings could have achieved. "Ambassador," Michael said quietly, "these beings traveled across the stars seeking sanctuary. They have technology that could have conquered us without effort, yet they've shown nothing but peaceful intentions. Thor risked his life to save humans he'd never met. What greater evidence of character could we ask for?" Reeves considered this, her decades of diplomatic experience weighing the unprecedented situation. "I need to speak with the president, but I believe I'll be recommending that we extend formal diplomatic recognition and begin discussions about limited settlement rights. Thor's reaction needed no translation. His posture straightened, his eyes brightened, and a rumbling sound that they had learned indicated pleasure emanated from his massive chest. "There's one more thing you should see before you make your recommendation," Michael suggested. "Something we've been working on that might help make the case." He led the group to an adjacent chamber that had been converted into a communication center. Frost was already there working with a team of scientists at a console that interfaced with the alien ship's technology. The reptilian alien scales glowed with iridescent patterns that indicated focused concentration. "What are we looking at?" Reeves asked. "The future," Michael replied simply. "Frost, show them." Frost activated the system with a series of vocalizations. A holographic display materialized in the center of the room, a three-dimensional rendering of Earth surrounded by smaller structures in orbit. "These are habitat designs," Maya explained, "engineered to orbit Earth without affecting our environment or security. Self-sustaining using technology that's completely compatible with our ecosystem." "They would live in space?" Wilson asked, surprised. "Many of the refugee species are adapted to zero-gravity environments," Thompson explained. "Earth's gravity would actually be uncomfortable for them long-term. These habitats would allow them to live according to their biological needs while maintaining close diplomatic and trade relations with Earth." The display shifted, showing how the habitats could be constructed using materials from our solar system's asteroid belt, no exploitation of Earth's resources required. Further projections demonstrated potential technological exchanges, medical breakthroughs, and scientific collaborations. "They've thought this through," Reeves observed, clearly impressed. "They've had years of flight time to plan," Michael pointed out. "They're not arriving unprepared. They're offering a genuine partnership." Ambassador Reeves studied the projections for several long moments, her diplomatic mind assessing opportunities and risks. Finally, she turned to Thor and Frost, who waited patiently for her response. "I believe we have much to discuss," she said, addressing them directly for the first time. "On behalf of the United States government, I extend a preliminary welcome and an invitation to formal diplomatic dialogue." Thor and Frost exchanged what could only be described as a look of relief. They had taken the first crucial step towards sanctuary for their people. As the others discussed logistical details, Michael stepped back, watching the scene with quiet satisfaction. This was what he had fought for, not just the survival of two alien beings, but the beginning of a relationship that could transform humanity's future. Colonel Wilson joined him, his weathered face thoughtful. "You know, Hayes, in 40 years of military service, I've seen a lot of first meetings between potential adversaries. This might be the first one that started with genuine hope instead of suspicion." "That's what makes it historic," Michael replied. "We're choosing a different path." "Thanks to you," Wilson acknowledged. "If you hadn't stood up to Pierce, hadn't insisted on treating them as people instead of specimens." Michael shook his head. "I just showed what was already there. They did the rest themselves." The moment was interrupted by an urgent alert from the facility's detection systems. Maya checked her tablet, her eyes widening. "Multiple signals detected," she reported. 7 distinct ships entering Earth's atmosphere." The room froze. 7 ships was far more than the occasional scout they had detected before. "Defensive posture," Wilson asked, automatically, military training kicking in. "No," Michael countered firmly. "First contact protocol. They're responding to Thor and Frost's signals. This isn't an invasion, it's a diplomatic delegation." General Matheson checked his own secure communications device. "NORAD has them on radar. The president is being briefed. We have minutes to decide how to respond." "We've already decided," Michael insisted. Ambassador Reeves just extended diplomatic recognition. "These are representatives coming to negotiate formally, exactly as diplomatic protocol would dictate." Thor approached, making urgent gestures that the translator rendered. "These are speakers, council of elders. They come in peace to talk. Please, no weapons." The room erupted in tense discussion, military caution warring with diplomatic opportunity. Ambassador Reeves raised her hands, silencing the debate. "General Matheson, please inform the President that I am invoking diplomatic protocol under Executive Order 1333. These ships are to be granted diplomatic status and safe passage to designated coordinates." Her voice carried the weight of decades of international crisis management. "If we respond with military posturing to their diplomatic outreach, we set a dangerous precedent for all future interactions." Matheson hesitated only briefly before nodding. I'll relay your directive. But I want fighter escorts maintaining distance, not threatening, but present. Acceptable, Reeves agreed. Mr. Hayes, please work with Thor and Frost to establish appropriate meeting protocols. Dr. Thompson, Dr. Chen prepare cultural briefing materials for our diplomatic team. Colonel Wilson secure transportation to the designated meeting site. She straightened the full weight of her position, evident in her bearing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to host Earth's first interstellar diplomatic conference. Let's make it historic for the right reasons. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of preparation. The designated meeting site, a remote area of the Nevada desert not far from the facility, was secured and prepared according to both human diplomatic protocols and the guidelines Thor and Frost provided for their own species. Medical teams stood by with environmental support equipment designed for various biological needs. Communication systems were established using the translation technology Maya had developed. Michael worked tirelessly alongside Thor and Frost, ensuring that every aspect of the meeting would minimize misunderstandings and maximize productive dialogue. They developed greeting rituals, seating arrangements, and communication procedures that honored both human and alien customs. As dawn broke over the desert, 7 ships descended in formations smaller than Thor and Frost's craft, but clearly of the same design. They landed in a perfect circle around the designated meeting area, their hulls shimmering with the same organic mechanical technology that had so fascinated Earth scientists. The human delegation assembled at one end of the site, Ambassador Reeves at the center, flanked by General Matheson, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Chen, Colonel Wilson, and several other high-ranking officials. Michael stood slightly apart with Thor and Frost serving as the bridge between the two groups. The ship's hulls reconfigured, creating openings from which emerged a procession of beings diverse beyond imagination. Some resembled Thor, others Frost, but many were entirely different crystalline structures that floated rather than walked. Beings that seemed composed of shifting light patterns, forms that defied easy categorization. At their center walked a being that commanded immediate attention, tall and dignified, with features that combined aspects of several species. This was clearly the leader, the chief diplomat of the refugee fleet. Thor and Frost moved forward to greet them, performing a complex series of gestures and vocalizations that Michael recognized as formal greetings in their culture. The newcomers responded in kind, their movements conveying respect and gratitude. Then, to everyone's surprise, the leader turned directly to Michael and spoke in halting but recognizable English. You saved our people, taught, understanding, created, bridge. Michael struggled to maintain his composure in the face of this unexpected communication. You speak our language. Learning from signals, from Thor, from Frost, messages sent. Understanding dawned. The aliens had been monitoring all communications since their arrival, learning English from the very transmissions meant to track them. Michael turned to Ambassador Reeves, who stepped forward with perfect diplomatic poise. On behalf of the United States and the people of Earth, I extend formal greetings and welcome you to our world. The alien leader made a gesture that Thor had taught them represented deep respect. I am Speaker Vorax, voice of the Council of Elders, representing the combined peoples of the Lyran system. Now, what followed was the most extraordinary diplomatic conference in human history. For 6 hours, representatives of Earth and the refugee fleet discussed potential terms for limited settlement, technological exchange, and ongoing relations. Thor and Frost served as cultural interpreters, helping both sides navigate complex concepts and customs. Michael observed with quiet amazement Ambassador Reeves masterfully negotiated terms that protected Earth's interests while extending genuine humanitarian aid to the refugees. The aliens, for their part, offered technological and medical knowledge beyond human development, while requesting only limited settlement rights in Earth orbit and access to uninhabited regions of the solar system for resource gathering. As the conference concluded with preliminary agreements established, Speaker Vorax approached Michael privately. Your voice made this possible. The alien leader said, the translation now smoother after hours of communication. When Thor and Frost were captured, we feared the worst. Your world's first response was fear weapons. Fear is a natural response to the unknown, Michael acknowledged, but it doesn't have to be the final response. This wisdom is rare, Vorax observed. Many worlds we approached responded only with weapons. They never learned what gifts we might have shared. Their loss, Michael replied simply. Humanity has made many mistakes in our history, but we're learning. Vorax made a gesture that conveyed something like approval or blessing. The universe is vast and often hostile. Species that learn to recognize friends across biological differences survive longer than those who see only threats. A lesson worth teaching, Michael agreed. As the aliens returned to their ships and the human delegation prepared to depart, General Matheson approached Michael. The military man's typically stern expression had softened slightly. "The president is pleased," he said without preamble. "The preliminary agreements protect our security while opening unprecedented opportunities for advancement. And the refugees get a chance to survive," Michael added, keeping focus on what he considered the most important outcome. Matheson nodded, acknowledging the point. "The president has authorized me to offer you a permanent position. Director of Interspecies Relations, reporting directly to Ambassador Reeves. You'd be the primary human liaison for all interactions with the Lyrans." Michael considered the offer, watching as Thor and Frost conferred with their people near the ships. "What about Thor and Frost? What's their status?" "Full diplomatic recognition. They'll be officially designated as the Lyran Embassy to Earth." Matheson almost smiled. "I believe that makes them the first non-human ambassadors in our history." "They've earned it," Michael said simply. "So the position," Matheson pressed. Michael turned to face the general fully. "With one condition. The program needs to expand beyond just diplomatic and scientific purposes. I want to establish a training center teaching others the methods we've developed. Not just for working with the Lyrans, but for any future first contact scenarios." "You want to institutionalize the Whisper Protocol," Matheson realized. "Exactly, because someday we'll meet other species who aren't as immediately friendly as the Lyrans. We'll need people who understand how to build bridges instead of walls." Matheson considered this military calculation balanced against forward-thinking strategy. "I'll take it to the president, but I think he'll agree. The world changed today, Hayes. We need to be ready for what comes next." 5 years later, Michael Hayes stood before a new class of 30 students at what had become known as the Whisper Protocol Academy. The facility, built adjacent to the original Alien Research Center, now served as Earth's premier training institution for interspecies communication and diplomacy. The students represented diverse backgrounds: military personnel, scientists, diplomats, linguists, and even a few civilians selected for their unique skills in communication or empathy. All had passed rigorous screening for both aptitude and temperament. "The fundamental principle of the Whisper Protocol is simple," Michael explained, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Approach without fear. Listen before speaking. Respect before judgment." At 59, he moved with the same deliberate confidence that had served him well throughout his career, though silver now dominated his once dark hair. Thor stood beside him now, serving not just as an ambassador but as a fellow instructor. The massive alien had mastered English remarkably well over the years, though his pronunciation retained distinctive non-human qualities. "Communication, not just words," Thor added, demonstrating how far his language skills had progressed. "Communication intent, respect, understanding." A young woman raised her hand. "But how do we establish initial trust with a potentially dangerous species? The Lyrans were refugees seeking help. Future contacts might be more aggressive." "Excellent question," Michael acknowledged. "And that's precisely why we don't just teach techniques, we teach principles. The approach changes depending on the species and situation, but the core remains the same: recognize personhood across biological differences." "Fear natural," Thor added. "For all species. First step always same show, you not threat." Another student, a military officer with combat experience, spoke up. "With all due respect, sir, sometimes threats are real. Not every species will be friendly." "You're absolutely right, Captain," Michael agreed. "The protocol doesn't assume universal benevolence. It assumes universal personhood, that intelligent beings, regardless of biology, share certain fundamental needs and responses. Understanding those is your first line of defense." He activated a holographic display showing various alien physiologies they had encountered over the past 5 years, not just Lyrans, but several other species discovered in deep space explorations made possible by shared technology. "Every sentient species we've encountered has some form of communication, social structure, and concept of territory or sovereignty. The specifics vary dramatically, but these elements are universal. Finding them is your key to initial communication. Colonel Wilson, now in his late 60s, but still serving as the Academy's security director, entered the chamber. His weathered face bore the additional lines of 5 extraordinary years, but his eyes remained sharp and alert. Hayes, we've received word from the Lyran outpost in the asteroid belt. They've detected an unidentified object entering the solar system. Not Lyran design. The room fell silent. Despite 5 years of peaceful coexistence with the Lyran refugees, humanity remained vigilant about new contacts. Trajectory, Michael asked, automatically shifting to mission focus. Decelerating near Jupiter. Looks like a controlled approach. Michael turned to his class, seeing the mixture of anticipation and apprehension on their faces. It seems today's lesson might become a practical exercise sooner than expected. Thor made a series of gestures to the communication panel, receiving data from the Lyran monitoring systems. Not recognizing design. Not from our sector of galaxy. This is what we've prepared for, Michael reminded the class. The second, first contact. Everything we've learned from the Lyrons will be put to the test. As the class dispersed to their assigned stations according to first contact protocols, Michael found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. From a wounded veteran rehabilitating predators in Montana to humanity's foremost expert on interspecies communication, a path he could never have imagined. When Dr. Thompson, now serving as the Academy's scientific director, joined him as they walked toward the command center. Nervous, she asked with the familiarity of a colleague who had shared many historic moments. Cautiously optimistic, Michael replied. The Whisper protocol worked once. It can work again. It worked because you made it work, Thompson reminded him. Your instinct, your compassion, those can't be fully taught. Oh, they don't need it to Baine, Michael said as they entered the command center where displays showed the approaching unidentified vessel. Everyone has the capacity for connection. Some just need permission to use it. Ambassador Reeves, who had remained Earth's chief diplomatic officer for alien relations, greeted them with her characteristic poise. The President has authorized first contact procedures with you as lead communicator, Michael. And Thor, co-lead. The President feels having a non-human presence might help establish that Earth maintains peaceful relations with multiple species. Michael nodded, appreciating the wisdom in this approach. He watched as the tracking systems monitored the decelerating ship, its design unlike anything either human or Lyran technology had produced. Once more into the unknown, he murmured. Thor, who had joined them at the main console, placed one massive paw gently on Michael's shoulder, a gesture he had learned from humans and made his own. Not unknown, the alien corrected. Just not yet friend. Michael smiled at the distinction. You've learned well. Good teacher, Thor rumbled, the alien approximation of a smile appearing briefly on his fearsome features. As preparations continued around them for humanity's second first contact, Michael Hayes reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had begun with a simple act of compassion toward a wounded alien. The Whisper protocol had evolved from a method of calming a frightened creature to the foundation of humanity's approach to the cosmos. In a universe filled with voices, sometimes the most important messages came not in grand declarations or technological marvels, but in the quiet whispers of understanding across the stars.